So as I said, this is Susan Musser. I'm the Community Manager for Tipasa WorldShare Interlibrary Loan and the Iliad to Tipasa communities. I'm happy to welcome you all to today's session, Making the Move to Tipasa, a Lightning Talk Encore. We have two librarians with us today who are using Tipasa and have some great information to share about specific features and functionality they have incorporated into their workflows to streamline and make them more efficient. You may have seen in initial announcements that we would have two additional speakers today, but due to unforeseen circumstances, they're not able to join us, so our agenda may be shortened a little bit from our originally scheduled hour. Before we get started, as always, I have some general housekeeping items. You may see your name listed on the screen as the only attendee. This protects your privacy, but we do have quite a large audience with us today. For those of you on the phone, you are in a listen-only mode. This makes it easier to hear the speaker and record the event. If you are listening to the audio through your computer and you experience problems, you can dial into the teleconference, and I'll provide that in the chat panel just as soon as we get started. Closing other applications on your workstation may also help improve the quality of the broadcast, so that might be another option if you need to stay dialed in through your computer. After each presentation, we will pause and take questions from the chat, so please submit those questions on the chat panel located on the right side of your screen throughout each presentation, and we'll respond to as many as time permits. When you submit a question through the chat panel, please submit it to all panelists. We will focus on answering questions related to the specific features and workflows discussed by our panelists, but we will be providing some additional resources at the end to assist you with any other questions you may have about Tipasa. After today's event, we will send out a link to a recording of the presentation to everyone who attended, as well as those who registered for the event but could not attend. The recording will also be posted in the Community Center on the event page, so you'll have access to view it at any time. So as I said, I'm really excited about today's session and excited to introduce you to our presenters. So first up, we'll have Karen Alexander from Augsburg University, who will be sharing how her library has implemented Tipasa's tagging feature. Karen has been at Augsburg for a little over a year. Before that, she was at Luther Seminary for 11 years. She got her MLIS at St. Catherine University in 2012, and all of her library jobs have had to do with ILL, from her student worker position when she was a grad student studying philosophy to the present. After Karen's presentation, we'll have Gina Bolger from Cornerstone University presenting how Tipasa has improved both the patron and staff user experience with interlibrary loan. Gina has been with Cornerstone for 23 years, where her current job includes interlibrary loan, reference, instruction, and serving as a liaison for education, TESOL, and history. She is currently the secretary for Michigan's Academic Library Association. Gina earned her MLIS from the University of Illinois, and she has a husband and two daughters who she enjoys exploring new places with, hiking, and reading. After each of our presenters finishes their presentation, Jennifer Corsi, the product manager for Tipasa, will provide some additional information about how other libraries live with Tipasa are utilizing tagging and improving their staff and patron experience. So with that, I will go ahead and turn things over to Karen.
Hi, everybody. My name is Karen Alexander, and I am from Augsburg University in Minneapolis, Minnesota. And I'm going to tell you about the tagging feature in Tipasa. First, a little bit of information about Augsburg. The library here is Lindell Library. And as I said, we're in Minneapolis, Minnesota, where the weather is great. Our enrollment is about 3,500 students. We went live with Tipasa in June 2017. Before that, we used Iliad. And our ILL volume for 2016 and 2017 was about 6,700 borrowing and lending requests. So tagging, as it sounds, lets you create on-the-fly tags for interlibrary loan requests that you may need to go back to for whatever reason. There is no setup or configuration required. You can just start making tags and using them right away out of the box. And the tags are entirely user-created, and they are easily edited or deleted. So you can be as structured or as loose as you need to or want to be, you know, all the way from creating your own controlled vocabulary to just making things up on the fly and seeing how they work for you as tags, and then deciding whether you need to change the language that you're using or delete some of them because they're not useful. All of that is just really easy to do, so you can, you know, use it the way it works best for you at your library. And at Augsburg, we have been pretty loose with our tag making. We didn't think about it ahead of time and say, okay, we're going to use this language for these types of items. We just make up our tags as we go, and that has seemed to work pretty well for us. The way we use tags is basically to communicate between 5 different staff users. The items that we tag could be items that need to be mailed to our second campus in Rochester, Minnesota, a student worker who wants a supervisor to look at a request, or if the request needs to be canceled, if it comes back unfilled. And also we have a inquiry ticketing system, and so if there's a corresponding ticket for a request, we have a tag for that. And so those are just some examples of the way we are using tags at Augsburg. So here's an example. This is what the home page of Tipasa looks like when you're using tags. You can see that below the search field, there's the little label frequently used tags, and you can see 6 different button-like things. And those are some of our frequently used tags. So if I were to click on one of them, like if I were to click on the Mail to Rochester tag, this is what I would see next. So it would bring me a list of every request that has the tag Mail to Rochester on it. And at the time that I did this screenshot, we only had 2 requests with that tag. All right, and then when you're in a request and you want to tag it, you can choose from the drop-down menu of already existing tags. And this, you can see there's a little bit of a slider on the drop-down menu, so this is only a partial picture of all of our existing tags. Or if you need to create a new tag, you can just type into the field whatever language you want and create a new tag right there on the fly. As for where the tag is on the request, you can see here it's near the top underneath the bibliographic information. And they are gray, so they do tend to disappear. You have to be careful and not go through these too quickly. We have accidentally missed tags because of that. They camouflage themselves amid all the other text and with the fact that they are gray. Our only criticism of them is that they can be hard to see on the request, and we think it would be an improvement if they were colored somehow or placed more prominently on the request. So to sum up, the tagging feature is really easy and convenient to use. It's a good way for coworkers to communicate about requests even if their work times don't overlap. And our one criticism is really just that they can be easy to miss because they're gray and they are in the middle of the request form surrounded by lots of other gray text. And that is my lightning talk about tagging.
Thanks, Karen. I'll hand things over to Jennifer to talk a little bit more about how some other Tipasa libraries are using this option.
Yes, that was great information. Thank you, Karen. And as you mentioned specifically, something that we're seeing very commonly with other Tipasa libraries is being able to put another team member, staff member's name on a request to tag it. A lot of times we see that student workers do that because they need a staff person, a librarian, to look at a request if they can't find it or having problems with it. So that's a very common workflow, a way of identifying to another team member, hey, I need you to look at this request because I have some problems. We're also seeing lots of Tipasa libraries use tags to have maybe their acquisitions or their selectors look at it. They'll put those tags on the request, and then the acquisitions person also logs into Tipasa once or twice a day. They look at the requests that have those tags, and they make some kind of decision about it. So again, notifying other staff members about specific requests they need to look at. We see some Tipasa libraries using tags basically to put some notes on the request. Maybe that further information is needed, or I'm waiting for a patron to reply. We've seen a couple libraries using it to mark things that are not able to be renewed. So another way of sharing information by using tags. So this is another example. Karen showed you hers from the home page, and this is from actually my demonstration account. But some tags that we've got here. And again, as you saw from Karen, you can easily click on those to find all of the requests that have that specific tag, and that's right there on the home page, making it easy to find those requests and track those things that you need to do follow-up on. Okay, so now we can take some tagging questions. Let me look in the chat window. I see that there's one specifically for you. Karen, there's a question someone's asking about that ticketing system that you use. Is that LibAnswers, and are you cross-referencing? Is that how you're using tags for that purpose?
No, it is a system called Kayako, and it's actually a university-wide system, so a bunch of, all different departments at the university use it for their own, their own purposes. So if somebody, for instance, if somebody writes in with a question about, I need this book and I don't see that Augsburg has it, what do I do? Then we'll cross-reference it with an ILL request. Or,
okay.
Yeah. So we do actually use LibAnswers, but that's not the ticketing system I was referring to.
But it's still a way that you're cross-referencing to another vehicle that you're using within your library. Okay. So there's another question about, can our customers see the tags? Karen, do you want to answer that, or would you prefer that I do?
Sure. No, they cannot see the tags.
Tags are only visible by your library.
Yeah.
And then we've got a couple other questions specifically about notes, but I think I would like to save that to the end, and then I can follow up on notes in particular. Let's see. There is a question also about deleting or editing tags, like if you have a typo or something.
Yes. It's very easy. You can just go in and delete them. I mean, I wish that I could demonstrate that, but I can't. And you can edit them too. You can just go in and change the spelling or capitalize or whatever you need to do.
And I switched back to the display of my home screen slide, Karen, because where we have the frequently used tags, there is an all tags link below that, and once you click that, you see them all, and that's how you would click on them to edit. You can't really demo it, but that's where it exists. Let me see what other questions we have about tags. There's a question about filtering requests by tags. Can you see all active lending requests at a given status that do or do not have a certain tag.
Sorry, can you repeat that?
So the question is there a way to filter requests by tags? So for example, see all active lending requests at a given status that do or do not have a certain tag.
I don't know about the given status. I mean, that the status or the tags remain on the request until you take them off, regardless of what the status is. So, but you know, if you click on the tag name, like you're looking at here on the screen with the frequently used tags, you can see all the requests that have that tag, but it won't distinguish between statuses. Does that answer the question?
We'll have to have the person who asked it maybe put in chat to see if that answers her question. I would point out just one additional thing. So when you click on one of these tags and to see a list of all the requests that have that particular tag, there will be 3 tabs showing you all the borrowing requests in one view, all the lending requests in one view, and all the document delivery requests in one view that have that particular tag. So you can filter them that way, but as Karen noted, not necessarily by the particular status within each of those workflows.
This is Gina. Can I jump in with a thought?
Yes.
Okay, I was thinking about how in Iliad you have items in all different queues in all different places, but in Tipasa it's really a different way of thinking. You don't have all those different queues and statuses. So I haven't really found the need to, you know, separate them out by those queues like we used to.
Okay, and that relates to a question that we did get also about are tags used similarly to the way different queues might have been used in Iliad.
Gina, were you an Iliad user?
I was for about 10 years, I think, or so.
Okay, you might be able to answer that question better than I could because before I came here, I was not an Iliad user. So I only used Iliad for about 2 months.
I actually think that was one of the big changes for training my students is that they no longer had to reroute requests. It was like the request is right there and you do everything to it instead of moving it around. And so that actually made a lot more sense to them. But it is a different way of thinking about the request.
Okay, yeah, that is helpful. There's also another question related to Iliad asking, are tags similar to flags in Iliad? I don't know, Gina, if you can answer that one, and also a follow-up, they don't change the actual status of the request.
Right. I'm trying to remember the flags in Iliad. I don't know if I used those. I do know that I'm starting to use tags as a way to remind myself of things. I put the notes earlier. That was one thing I was really worried about, was not being able to put the notes in because I did use it all the time, but I honestly do not miss it. And I was sitting here thinking, why? But I think it's because the tags, I just have things like waiting to hear back from library or, yeah, anything I would have put in a note, I feel like I put here.
Okay. And let's take one last question, and it's, can we limit which users can create tags? If we're using a large volume of tags, we want to make sure we're not recreating tags we've already had staff create. For example, people using slightly different ways of describing a similar action. Have you run into that problem with different users, Karen?
I have not. We do not have a large number of tags. I would say I think we're right around 20, maybe a little lower than that. And we don't have a large number of people working on them either. So As far as I know, there isn't a way to prevent somebody who is able to use Tipasa from making tags, other than just telling them not to. I don't think there's a way you can change settings.
You're right. There's not. Anyone who's using the staff interface could create a tag.
Yeah.
And it's something that we talk about during implementation about, start thinking about how you might want to use tags. And I think, Karen, you even mentioned, you kind of played around with it at first, and sometimes you maybe changed the word that you were using. And you can do so by editing and deleting tags. But I do think that that's kind of a workflow issue. You want to make sure everyone is using the same language when they're talking about a specific tracking or a problem on a request. They're using similar language so that they're easy to understand between staff members.
Yeah.
All right, that was great. Thank you very much, Karen.
Thanks.
And Gina. And so now I think we want to pass it on for Gina's presentation. You'll have to forward a couple extra slides, Gina, since I went back one.
Improved experience. Yeah, I think I'm on now. So I'm going to talk about the improved experience for patrons and staff, because there were so many things I wanted to mention that I put them all together. So my name is Gina Bolger, and I work at Cornerstone University. This is a picture of our library. We are in Grand Rapids, Michigan. Our enrollment is just over 2,000 students, and we also went live with Tipasa last June. Our ILL volume for the year before was over 12,000. That's a little misleading because it includes all of our print books that we send through our Melcat, which is a Michigan system that we have. So the first feature that I want to talk about that really was the thing that drew me to Tipasa is that it's a web-based platform. A couple years ago, we got a new IT person, and he decided we were going to become a Mac environment. So I had an old Dell laptop that was very slow, and they were offering us new Macs if we switched over. The only thing that was holding me back was Iliad. So I decided to go for the new computer since I do teaching and other things and wanted a computer that I didn't need to restart a few times every day. So I went with the Mac, and we kept one PC in circulation, and I shared it with the students, so that would cause problems. So I was really looking for a web-based platform. So when I heard that was Tipasa, I was very excited. So now that we've switched, I can work from anywhere, and I can work on my Mac, and you can work on iPads, and it's been wonderful. A couple days in fall, we had no power in the building because of some construction, and so I was able to keep up with Tipasa from a local bookstore. The other thing I like is that we don't require upgrades or reinstalling the software anymore. And I also like that the service configuration with everything I need to change to modify things for myself is right there on the front screen. So I don't have to worry about the staff manager and the customization manager anymore. Another feature was that we could use it with our existing SAML authentication. We already use this, and I'm not an expert on this, so I say the word, but I don't know really what it means. But we use this for our inter-campus portal, our Moodle system, which is like Blackboard, and all of our Gmail systems. The whole campus uses Gmail, so once you log into any of those systems, you don't have to log in again. So that now includes Tipasa. So if our students are logged into their Moodle account and they're researching and they find an article that they need, they can request it through interlibrary loan without even logging in again. So that has been wonderful. In the past with Iliad, we had them create their own accounts, and that was really hard for the users because they just didn't want to have another account and another password. And so sometimes they would just stop at that point and decide not to use interlibrary loan. So this has been great. Also, any issues they have with their account or their password gets handled by the IT department. so that is a big win for me. The next feature I called Lending Advantages. I was thinking and talking to my student workers about what they have liked, and we all like working live on the system. We don't have to have the transaction number for ILLiad and the OCLC number. That was always interesting to train them on. It made no sense to have two numbers. Now there's one number and it's all live right there on the system. No longer, we don't have any requests that are sitting on our system, but then they're actually not on OCLC anymore. It's all the same. They also, as I said before, they like the organization, so there's no rerouting of the request. It just makes more sense to how we think. And then I like the policies directory being right there on the front page. You can see the arrow, and then the service configuration is right there as well. Some more advantages is just that we have saved a ton of time. I had 8 hours of student help last year, and this year I have the same amount, but they've actually had extra time, so they've been helping me with weeding of another area. And then I was curious, so I went and it showed that we had done 3,100 lending requests last fall, and this fall we did 5,100, and they had extra time to help me. And the students told me that their key to success is that little Search Google Scholar link over there. So if they click on that, just one click, it brings up just that article basically. And since they're doing the work from on campus, it goes through our IP address and they can get our link to the article through that authentication. And then they don't have to save it anymore by transaction number like in ILLiad, they can just send it along. So I think just those few clicks that they save really speeds it up. They also like having the group affiliations right at the top there where they can see if we need to charge the library or not. Another feature I like is how well it integrated to Summon. This was fairly easy to set up. Our e-resources librarian just changed the links when it was time to go live. And now this is what our Summon page looks like. So once you click on your article, this is one that we don't have, then you click on the request, the orange button there. Then that goes to our SAML authentication. If you were logged in already, you wouldn't see that. And then this is the screen in Tipasa that it populated, and then they can just submit it. So to them, it's been a lot easier for Summon. Then another thing that I like is the Patron interface. I talked to some of our power users, we all have those, and they told me that they really like the clean design. They like the renewal button. In the ILLiad system, in the beginning, I was able to make the web pages look like how I wanted them, but now with so much more on my plate, I don't have time to do all the web pages, so the renewal button was hidden for them, and that was confusing. So they love how it's right there now. And some of my patrons have opted in for the text messages, and they love that. I don't think everyone's figured that out, though. I think the last thing I want to talk about are the custom notifications. I had a few emails in ILLiad that I had designed, and so I was really glad that I could do it here too. And this actually makes it a ton easier. So this is one that I made for MELCAT. Sometimes if I see a book is held by the Michigan libraries, I'll switch it over to our MELCAT system. So this is an email that I designed to tell the patron what's going on. And the thing that I really love is that all of those little inserts over on the right are right there in the place where you design the email. I used to have to search for that online when I was trying to do them in ILLiad. And then, so when you're this is a request. And another custom notification that I love is for our liaisons. So if I see that this is a book that I think maybe we'd want to order, then I go over and click on email, and it gives me the options of all the emails I've created, and I choose the liaison one, and then it shows up like this, and I can put in which liaison I want to send it to, and that's what I've chosen to tell them. And so then they can forward it to our acquisitions person to get one. So the custom notifications I've been loving. And it looks like that is the end of what I had to share.
Thanks so much, Gina. I think that was lots of really great information again. Now we'll pass things back to Jennifer so she can share a few more ways that other libraries are using utilizing this improved patron and staff experience.
So similar to what Gina said about emailing internal departments, we see lots of librarians doing that using Tipasa acquisition selectors. We see some Tipasa libraries that have a custom notification specifically for their cataloger. We all know that occasionally you'll get a lending request and the item is either disappeared or you don't actually hold it, and you do need to get your holdings updated. So they found that it's a quick way to shoot that email as soon as that lending request in off to their catalog, asking them to update the holdings for that particular title. We also, as Gina noted about the patron request forms, we do hear Tipasa libraries liking the clean look of it. We also have heard from some libraries, specifically those that will, send physical items out to distance learners or faculty who are, away from campus, that they can require them to fill in those mailing address fields so that they are certain to have the most up-to-date address information in order to send those items to those patrons. And also, as Gina mentioned, must be a common theme, but lots of Tipasa libraries have taken advantage of moving from ILIAD to Tipasa to update their authentication. Lots of libraries who run basic authentication and had that separate account for patrons found the same kind of blockers with patrons that Gina mentioned. So as they migrate, it was a chance to engage with their IT department and to hook into whatever the campus was using, whether it was LDAP or SAML or Shibboleth. We have a lot of authentication options in Tipasa, and it's a great opportunity to get that single sign-on. It makes the experience so much nicer for your patrons. And then reiterating that kind of patron experience, the cleaner design of the patron interface, and the fact that it's can be used on any device. It automatically fits the screen that the patron's using, so we certainly get lots of comments about, how nice it looks on a tablet, and we know patrons are out there on the stacks on their phones, so the interface adjusts to that, and we know that patrons appreciate that. Okay, so does anyone have a question for Gina or Karen or myself about just overall patron and staff experience? Let me take a look. I think I see one here now. So if we already have custom email templates in ILIAD, will they be migrated to these custom notifications, or will we have to cut and paste them all manually? Gina, do you want to answer that one?
Yeah, I don't believe that they transfer over. I took the ones, I should say ILIAD gives you quite a few, or not ILIAD, Tipasa gives you quite a few that you'll use, so you won't have to transfer those like overdue notices, but the ones that you've created yourself, you will have to cut and paste it over. It is just a one-time thing, so it didn't take me that long.
Right, and you're right, we can't transfer those into Tipasa, so you do need to recreate those custom notifications in Tipasa. So there's another question asking, can you speak a little bit more about the Google Scholar integration for lending and how that works in terms of your workflow in Tipasa?
Sure. We use this on the lending side mainly. The students go in and instead of searching our catalog for something, or I did in the beginning have them look up the article in Summon to pull it up to lend it, but now I don't know how they discovered this, but the students are smarter than us sometimes. But they clicked on that Google Scholar link, and the only option that came up was the article they wanted. So that's just how they use it. Then they bring it up and they download it and then use Article Exchange to send it through the request.
Great, thank you. A question about custom notifications. When sending those to, say, your acquisitions department, does it retain the to email address?
For the one that I created, I made the two to be blank because I usually look at it and see which of our liaison subject area it is, and so I wanted to fill that in, but I'm not sure, maybe one of the OCLC people can answer if I could have a set email in there if I were just sending it to one person each time.
Currently, you cannot default it. I mean, so for certain workflows, if it's a request, you can specify if it's going to be sent when you create the custom notification. Is it going to be sent to the patron? Is it going to be sent to like the borrowing library? And we can pull that email address in based on who you're going to send it to. But for this type of custom notification, you do not currently have the ability to say, you know, it always will go to this email address. So you would have to put that in. So let's see, we have a question about authentication, and is there a first-time registration for patrons, prompting them to fill out status and department? And is there a way to flag first-time users like there is in ILLiad?
Do you want me to
take that?
Well, for the way we have it set up, since it goes through their campus account, there's no beginning. I told the database person what fields I wanted to come over into Tipasa, so they send.
Right, so there's some options when you set up your authentication, and you do have an option if you want to.
And
Gina, I think we're losing you sometimes on the audio.
Yeah, I noticed that with you talking, but I'm not sure what to do about that.
It sounds pretty good. I mean, it's been solid most of the time. If we continue to have problems, I guess we could ask you to call in maybe if you're using your computer, but right now it sounded okay.
Okay. It just cut out, I think, just for a second there.
Yeah, I was just going to mention about that authentication piece that there is an option if you want to be able to approve users, like the first time use. So you do have that option. You don't have to use it. All right, I'm going through the chat questions to see if we have their questions about what Gina reviewed, and we do have one. Does the text messaging come as part of the Tipasa subscription? And I can answer that one. Yes, it does. There is no additional fee or there's no additional account that you need to set up. You have an overall setting for your notifications and whether or not you want to enable text at all, because we do know some libraries in Tipasa maybe aren't allowed to do text messaging because their circulation system doesn't have it, or it's just a standard policy that you can't text students. So you do have like an overall option of whether or not you want to use text, period. And then we have a question which is kind of general, but for either Gina or Karen, is which web browser is the best for the use of Tipasa? Have you guys seen an advantage?
This is Karen. I haven't noticed a difference with Tipasa. I usually use Chrome. In other, we're a World Share Management Service library. In other parts of WMS, I have noticed that some of them work better with Firefox. But for Tipasa, I really have not noticed any difference.
Yeah, I've only used Chrome for mine, so I'm not sure about the other browsers.
All right, thank you. And I see one last question, which actually was repeated from earlier about notes, so kind of related to tagging, but since this was asked by a couple of folks, I'll go ahead and say how notes exist now in Tipasa. So there's a variety of notes fields now. There's your patron note field, borrowing notes, lending notes, billing notes. But we have been asked by other Tipasa libraries, and I know ILLiad libraries want this as well, is for like what we're calling an internal notes field. So a note field that is only visible to staff at your institution. It's not visible to the other institutions that you borrow and lend with, and it's not visible to your patrons. So that is something that is our roadmap and will be coming in the next 12 months, an internal note field for that kind of tracking of messages back and forth. And it overlaps a little bit what you have with tags. I think tags are more designed to be kind of shorter pieces of information about a request, where an internal note might be more verbose about, you know, where you went to try to find this item. So it will supplement, I think, tags when we introduce that feature. All right, let me scroll through the chat one more time to see if any other questions have come in. All right, one more question about any difference between PC and Mac.
Actually, my students are using it on the PCs at Circulation. I'm using it on a Mac, and there's been no difference.
All right, thank you. All right, I think we actually got to all of the questions, which is nice.
And with that, I think that we are all finished with our Encore presentation of some of the lightning talks for today. I really want to thank both Karen and Gina so much for coming back and sharing these. These were initially presentations given at the OCLC Resource Sharing Conference back in March, but there was a great response. People really appreciated hearing from you about how you're actually using Tipasa and these specific features in your current workflow. So it's great that we could share this with a wider audience today. And if you have any other questions that didn't relate to those specific features or functionality, there are some places you can go for more information. You can always email the resource sharing team at oclcresourcesharing@oclc.org with any questions about which phase you might be in, current features available in Tipasa, next steps. Any question you have, always feel free to reach out there. If you want to know more about some of the general functionality or would like to see some other workflow videos or feature videos, you can visit the Iliad to Tipasa community at oc.lc/Iliad to Tipasa. You will need to log in using a WorldShare account. So any WorldShare account you have for any other OCLC products or services, a WorldCat Discovery account or WorldShare ILL, those will all work. If you don't know or don't have one of those accounts, you can fill out a form at oc.lc/Iliad to Tipasa sign up. That's all one word, and I can put that in the chat as well. And our orders team will get right back to you with credentials and information about how to get set up and logged in. And there's lots of great information there as well, especially on our preparing page. So if you are ready to take the next step and get on the implementation list and sign up for a cohort, the preparing page has lots of information just for those types of libraries. So we really encourage you to check that out in the Iliad to Tipasa community as well. So thank you again to Gina and Karen, and thanks to everyone who was able to join us this afternoon. You will be getting a link to the recording so you can go back and look at anything you might have missed or listen back to any detail or hear an answer to that question that you might have had. So thanks again, and we'll see you next time. Have a great afternoon.